Elias Crane handed over his last silver coins for an old mule and a dusty saddle, just enough to get him and his son to work before winter hit. But hidden inside that saddle wasn't supplies. It was a newborn baby, swaddled and silent. Within hours, armed riders lit up the night hunting for what they called the package. Elias had a choice: walk away or protect a child he never knew and become a target himself. What came next would expose a murder, a stolen inheritance, and a brother's deadly betrayal. The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty trading post as Elias counted his last coins for the third time. 8 silver pieces. Everything he had left after the mine closed and took his livelihood with it. His calloused hands trembled slightly as he placed the money on the wooden counter, the sound echoing like a death sentence in the quiet store. Silas Drummond smiled, that crooked smile that never reached his eyes. The merchant's fingers drummed against the counter as he examined each coin, turning them over with deliberate slowness. Behind him, through the grimy window, Elias could see the brown mule tied to the hitching post. Old, tired, but strong enough to carry supplies to the next territory where work might still exist. "She's a fine animal," Drummond said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "Comes with her own saddle." Previous owner was particular about keeping everything together. Something in the way Drummond's eyes darted away made Elias's stomach tighten, but desperation leaves little room for suspicion. Tommy was waiting at home, and their food would last maybe 2 more days. This mule represented their only chance to reach the lumber camps up north before winter set in. The transaction felt wrong from the moment Drummond's sweaty palm pressed the coins into his vest pocket. Too eager, too quick, the merchant barely looked at Elias as he handed over the lead rope, muttering something about the saddle being special cargo and how some things were better left undisturbed. Elias led the mule through the empty streets, his boots kicking up small clouds of dust with each step. The animal seemed nervous, constantly looking back toward the trading post, as if something precious had been left behind. Her ears twitched at every sound, and twice she tried to turn around completely. Back at his small cabin, Tommy waited on the front steps, his thin frame barely filling out the patched shirt that had once belonged to his mother. The boy's eyes lit up when he saw the mule, the first genuine smile Elias had seen from his son in weeks. "Is she ours, Pa? She is son. Her name's going to be Hope." As evening approached, Elias decided to examine his purchase more carefully. The saddle was heavier than it should have been, with strange bulges in the leather that didn't match any tool or supply he could identify. His weathered hands ran along the worn surface, feeling for loose straps or damaged areas that might need repair before their journey. That's when he heard it, a soft sound almost like breathing. His fingers found a hidden flap in the saddle's design, cleverly concealed beneath decorative stitching. The leather was warm to the touch, warmer than it should have been from just sitting in the cool evening air. Elias's heart began to race as he carefully worked the flap open. Inside, wrapped in soft cloth and nestled in a specially carved space, was something that made his world stop spinning. Something that would change everything he thought he knew about mercy, survival, and the weight of an impossible choice. But what he found in that saddle would soon bring danger to his door and force him to decide between saving his own family and protecting a life that wasn't his to save. A baby girl no more than a few days old, her tiny chest rising and falling with each precious breath. Elias stumbled backward, nearly dropping the saddle as his mind struggled to process what his eyes were seeing. The infant's face was peaceful in sleep. Her small fists curled against the soft fabric that surrounded her. Someone had taken great care to make her comfortable, Clean cloths, a small water pouch, even what appeared to be milk powder wrapped in oiled paper. P. What's wrong? Tommy's voice came from behind him, curious and concerned. Elias quickly closed the flap, his hands shaking as he tried to think. A baby. Someone had hidden a baby in the saddle and Drummond had sold it to him, like it was nothing more than leather and metal. Nothing, son. Just checking the equipment. But his mind was racing. Who puts a baby in a saddle? Why would Drummond sell it without mentioning this? And most terrifying of all, was this child stolen? The baby stirred, making a soft mewing sound that cut through Elias like a knife. It was the same sound Tommy had made as an infant. Before grief and hardship had stolen away those tender moments, before his wife's death had left him fumbling through fatherhood alone, Tommy stepped closer, his young face serious with the premature wisdom that poverty brings to children. Pa, there's something in there, isn't there? Elias looked at his son, really looked at him 8 years old, and already carrying the weight of their circumstances in his narrow shoulders. Already understanding that adults kept secrets, that sometimes survival meant looking the other way. Tommy, I need you to go inside and start packing our things. Only what we can carry. Are we leaving tonight, maybe? Probably. The boy nodded and disappeared into the cabin without another question. That's what hurt the most. How quickly Tommy had learned not to ask for explanations, not to expect comfort or reassurance, just to trust that his father knew what he was doing, even when Elias felt like he was drowning. Alone. Now Elias opened the saddle again. The baby's eyes were open, dark and alert, studying his face with the intense focus that only newborns possess. She didn't cry, didn't fuss, just watched him with an expression that seemed far too knowing for someone so small. What am I supposed to do with you? He whispered, as if in response, the child made another soft sound, and Elias felt something crack open in his chest. A feeling he'd buried since Tommy's mother died. Since he'd convinced himself that one child was all he could handle, all he deserved to protect. But this wasn't about what he deserved. This was about what was right. The sound of approaching horses made his blood freeze. Multiple riders moving fast, heading directly toward his cabin. Elias quickly closed the saddle and hefted it over his shoulder. The baby's weight, both precious and terrifying against his back. Through the window, he could see torches in the distance. Too many torches. Too organized. This wasn't a casual visit from neighbors. Tommy. Now his son appeared in the doorway with the small pack eyes wide but ready. The boy had learned to read danger in his father's voice, to move without questions when survival demanded it. Back door, son. Stay low. As they slipped out into the darkness behind their cabin, Elias could hear the riders getting closer. Voices calling out sharp and demanding. Someone was looking for something, or someone. And Elias had a terrible feeling he knew exactly what they were hunting for. But the night was about to reveal secrets that would make a hidden baby seem like the smallest of his problems, and force him to choose between the family he had and the family he never knew he needed. They moved through the darkness like ghosts, Elias carrying the saddle while Tommy stayed close to his side. The baby remained silent, as if she understood the danger they were all in. Behind them, the voices grew louder, more urgent. Search the cabin. Check every corner. He's got to be here somewhere. Boss wants that package found tonight. Package. They weren't looking for a person. They were looking for cargo. The baby wasn't just hidden. She was being hunted. Elias's mind raced as he led Tommy deeper into the woods behind their property. Whoever these men were, they knew exactly what Drummond had sold him. The forest provided cover, but it also trapped them. There was only one path through these woods that led to the main road, and the riders would figure that out soon enough. Elias needed answers, and he needed them fast. He found a hollow beneath a fallen oak tree, large enough to hide them temporarily. Tommy crouched down without being told, his young face pale but determined in the moonlight. Elias carefully opened the saddle again, checking on the baby. She was awake, those dark eyes studying his face with an intensity that made his chest tight. Someone had loved this child enough to hide her, to prepare for her care, to risk everything to keep her safe. The milk powder, the careful padding, the way she'd been positioned. This wasn't abandonment. This was desperate protection. "Fa," Tommy whispered, finally seeing what his father had been carrying. "Is that a baby?" "Yes." Tommy's eyes went wide, but not with fear, with wonder. He reached out tentatively, and the infant's tiny fingers wrapped around his thumb with surprising strength. "Where's her mama? I don't know, son, but I think we're about to find out." The sound of boots crashing through underbrush was getting closer. Elias could hear the men spreading out, searching systematically. These weren't random thieves or desperate men looking for food. They moved with military precision, following orders from someone who wanted this baby, found badly enough to organize a night hunt. "Mr. Crane." The voice that called out was smooth, educated, nothing like the rough men doing the searching. Someone important had come personally to oversee this operation. "Mr. Crane, I know you're out there. We just want to talk." Elias felt Tommy tense beside him. They both knew that when armed men said they just wanted to talk, talking was the last thing on their minds. "You purchased something today that doesn't belong to you, something that was stolen from its rightful family. We are prepared to compensate you generously for its return." The baby stirred in the saddle, making a soft sound that seemed impossibly loud in the quiet forest. Elias held his breath, praying she wouldn't cry. Tommy pressed closer, instinctively protective of the small life they discovered. "We know you're a good man, Mr. Crane, a father who understands what it means to protect a child. Help us bring this baby home to where she belongs." The words sounded reasonable, even caring, but something in the speaker's tone made Elias's skin crawl. This wasn't a father searching for his missing daughter. This was a hunter tracking valuable prey. And Elias was beginning to understand that the baby in his arms wasn't just lost. She was running from something terrible. But the truth about who was hunting her, and why someone would risk everything to hide her, was about to shatter everything Elias thought he knew about right and wrong. A new voice cut through the night air, desperate and breathless. "Don't listen to them, please." Elias froze. A woman's voice coming from the opposite direction of the searchers. Someone else was moving through these woods. Someone who knew exactly what was happening. "They took my husband. They'll take her too if you give her back." The woman's cries sent a chill down Elias's spine. This wasn't about a lost baby. This was about a stolen one, but stolen by whom and from whom? "Shut her up." The smooth voice from before had turned sharp. "Dangerous. Find them both." The sound of pursuit changed direction as the men split up, some heading toward the woman's voice, others continuing to search for Elias and the baby. In the chaos, Elias made a decision that would change everything. He handed the baby to Tommy. "Hold her. Don't move until I come back. P. No, I need to find out what's really happening here. Keep her quiet." Tommy nodded, accepting the small bundle with the careful reverence of someone who'd learned early that life was fragile and precious. The baby seemed to sense the change, settling more quietly against the boy's chest. Elias moved through the darkness toward the woman's voice, every instinct screaming that he was walking into danger. But he'd spent 8 years raising a child alone. 8 years, making impossible choices with incomplete information. Sometimes you had to act on faith and hope you were choosing the right side. He found her 20 yards away, pressed against a large boulder, her dress torn and muddy from running through the forest. She was young, maybe 25, with the kind of exhausted desperation that only comes from losing everything at once. "You have my daughter," she whispered when she saw him. "Please tell me you have my daughter." The baby in the saddle relief flooded her face. "She's alive. She's safe for now." "Who are you?" "My name is Rebecca Morrison. That's my husband's brother out there leading those men. He killed my husband 3 days ago, and now he wants to kill my baby too." The words hit Elias like a physical blow. Family killing family. A brother murdering his own blood for reasons that could only be money or power, or both. Why, my husband inherited the family ranch when their father died. Marcus never forgave him for that. When I had the baby, he saw his chance. Kill us both. Claim the land belonged to him all along. Rebecca's voice broke as she continued. "I managed to escape with Sarah, my daughter, but Marcus caught up with us at the trading post. I had seconds to hide her before he found me. I put her in that saddle and prayed someone good would find her. And your husband, dead shot in his own home while I ran with our baby." Elias felt the weight of understanding settle on his shoulders. This wasn't just about protecting a child anymore. This was about stopping a man who would kill his own family for money. What does he plan to do if he finds her? Rebecca's face went pale. He says she's not really his brother's child. Says I was unfaithful, and the baby proves it. He'll claim the inheritance is rightfully his, and then she didn't need to finish. Elias understood. A dead baby couldn't inherit anything. A dead baby couldn't grow up to challenge Marcus Morrison's claim. The sound of approaching footsteps made them both freeze. "Rebecca, come out now, and I might let you live." Marcus Morrison's voice was closer than Elias had expected. Close enough that running would mean being heard. Close enough that fighting might be their only option. But Elias was unarmed, exhausted, and responsible for 3 lives now instead of just 1. The choices ahead of him were all terrible, and time was running out to make any choice at all. In the distance, he could hear Tommy's voice, soft and soothing, singing a lullaby their mother used to sing. The boy was trying to keep the baby calm, unaware that the next few minutes would determine whether any of them lived to see dawn. And Marcus Morrison was getting closer with every heartbeat. Elias grabbed Rebecca's hand and pulled her toward where Tommy was hiding. They had maybe 30 seconds before Marcus and his men found them, and only one chance to get this right. "Can you ride?" he whispered urgently. "Yes, but the mule. It's our only way out." They reached the fallen oak just as torchlight began filtering through the trees behind them. Tommy looked up with relief when he saw his father, the baby still cradled safely in his arms. "This is her mama," Elias whispered to his son. "We're going to help them." Rebecca's face crumpled when she saw her daughter reaching out with trembling hands. But Elias stopped her. "Not yet. We move first." Reunion later, the mule was still tied near their cabin, and getting to her meant crossing open ground where they could be seen. But staying meant being trapped, and trapped meant dead. When I say run, you run. Don't look back, don't hesitate. Get to that mule and keep going. Rebecca nodded, tears streaming down her face. Tommy clutched the baby tighter, understanding that everything depended on the next few minutes. There, I see movement. The shout came from their left, closer than expected. Marcus's men had spread out wider than Elias had anticipated. The circle was tightening. Rah! They burst from the trees like startled deer, racing across the open ground toward the cabin. Behind them, shouts erupted as the searchers spotted their movement. Torches swung in their direction, and the sound of running boots filled the night air. Elias reached the mule first, quickly untying the lead rope, while Rebecca grabbed the animal's mane to steady herself. Tommy passed the baby up to her, and she clutched her daughter against her chest with a sob of relief. Go take her and go. What about you? Rebecca's eyes were wide with panic. Someone has to slow them down. Elias slapped the mule's flank, sending the animal into motion with Rebecca and the baby on its back. As they disappeared into the darkness toward the main road, he turned to face the approaching torches. Marcus Morrison emerged from the treine with 4 armed men. His face twisted with rage in the flickering light. He was younger than Elias had expected, maybe 35, with the kind of cold eyes that came from years of taking what he wanted by force. Where is she, Crane? Where's who? Marcus's laugh was sharp and bitter. Don't play games with me. I know you found the baby. I know my dear sister-in-law is here somewhere. This can end easy or hard, but it's going to end. Your brother's dead, isn't he? My brother was weak. He married a woman who couldn't even give him a legitimate heir. Everything he had should have been mine from the beginning. The admission hung in the air like a death sentence. Marcus Morrison had just confessed to murder, and he clearly didn't care who heard it. The baby's gone, Elias said simply. Took her to the territorial marshal this morning. Marcus's face darkened. You're lying. Check the cabin. Check the woods. She's not here. For a moment, uncertainty flickered across Marcus's features. Then his expression hardened again. Then you'll just have to tell me where you took her. The men behind Marcus raised their weapons, and Elias realized he'd bought Rebecca and the baby time, but probably not his own life. But sometimes a man's worth isn't measured by how long he lives, but by what he's willing to die protecting. P. Tommy's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Elias's heart stopped as he saw his son emerge from behind the cabin hands, raised, walking directly toward the armed men. Tommy, no. I heard everything. The boy said, his young voice steady despite the danger. I know what he did. Marcus turned his attention to the child, and Elias saw something predatory flicker in the man's eyes. A new opportunity, a new way to apply pressure. Well, the boy knows something useful. Leave him alone. Elias growled, stepping forward. Oh, I will. As soon as he tells me where the woman and baby went, Tommy looked directly at Marcus. His 8-year-old face serious beyond his years. They went to the territorial marshal just like P said. When this morning, right after we found the baby in the saddle, Marcus studied the boy's face, searching for deception. Tommy met his gaze steadily, and Elias felt a surge of pride mixed with terror. His son was lying with the calm confidence of someone who understood exactly what was at stake. You sure about that, boy? Yes, sir. P said it wasn't right to keep someone else's baby. Said we had to do the right thing, even if it was hard. The lie was perfect because it contained just enough truth to be believable. Elias would have done exactly that under normal circumstances. Marcus seemed to buy it, his shoulders relaxing slightly. And the woman Rebecca, she went with them. She was crying about her husband being dead. Marcus's jaw tightened at the mention of his brother, but he nodded slowly. The marshal will want proof. documentation. He'll send them back here to settle the inheritance properly. Probably, Tommy agreed, which means they'll be back. Elias realized what Marcus was thinking. If the baby and Rebecca were really with the territorial marshal, they'd have to return to prove their claim to the ranch. Marcus could prepare, and finish what he'd started under the cover of legal proceedings. "We'll be ready for them," Marcus said, more to himself than to anyone else. He turned to his men. "Search the cabin anyway. Make sure they're telling the truth." As the men moved it toward the small building, Elias caught Tommy's eye. His son gave the tiniest nod toward the woods, where Rebecca had disappeared. The boy had bought them time, but not much. The search of the cabin was quick and thorough. No baby, no woman, no sign that either had been there recently. When the men emerged empty-handed, Marcus's mood had shifted from angry to calculating. "You did the right thing, Crane. Civic duty and all that just seemed proper indeed. Of course, harboring fugitives would have been a serious crime. Lucky for you, you chose the lawful path." The threat was clear. Marcus was warning Elias to keep his story straight, to stick to the version Tommy had given them. "When the marshal brings them back for the hearing, I'll expect your cooperation as a witness." Witness to what? To the fact that my brother's wife was mentally unstable after his tragic death, that she made wild accusations about family members, that she wasn't fit to care for a child. Elias felt sick. Marcus was already planning his next move, setting up a legal way to take the baby, while discrediting Rebecca as an unfit mother. And if the child really isn't my brother's blood well, that changes the inheritance situation considerably. Marcus mounted his horse, his men following suit. As they prepared to leave, he looked down at Elias with cold satisfaction. "Thank you for your honesty, Mr. Crane. I won't forget it." As the riders disappeared into the darkness, Elias put his arm around Tommy's shoulders. "You did good, son. Real good. Are they really safe?" Elias looked toward the road where Rebecca and the baby had vanished, knowing that Marcus would eventually realize he'd been deceived. When that happened, the hunt would begin again, and this time, Marcus would be ready for lies. But right now, a mother and her baby had a head start, and sometimes that was all the difference between life and death. The question was, would it be enough? 3 days later, Elias and Tommy were loading their few possessions onto a borrowed wagon when they heard the sound of approaching hooves. Not the thundering pursuit they'd expected, but a slow, deliberate pace that suggested official business. The territorial marshal rode into view, a weathered man in his 50s with the kind of steady presence that came from years of dealing with frontier justice. Behind him rode 2 deputies, and between them on a familiar brown mule was Rebecca Morrison holding her baby daughter. Elias felt his heart skip. They'd made it. Somehow Rebecca had reached the marshal and convinced him to investigate her claims. "Mr. Crane." The marshal dismounted and extended his hand. "I'm Marshal Garrett. I believe you know Mrs. Morrison here. We've met. She tells an interesting story about her husband's death and a baby hidden in a saddle. Says, you saved both their lives." Elias glanced at Rebecca, who gave him a small, grateful smile. The baby was alert and healthy, wrapped in a clean blanket that suggested they'd been well cared for at the marshal's station. Just did what seemed right. According to Mrs. Morrison, her brother-in-law Marcus confessed to murder in your presence. That true every word. Marshal Garrett nodded grimly. "We rode out to the Morrison ranch this morning. Found evidence that supports her story. Blood in the house. Signs of a struggle and a fresh grave behind the barn. Marcus gone. Cleared out sometime yesterday with whatever he could carry. Left behind a written confession, though. Seems his conscience caught up with him. Elias frowned. That didn't sound like the cold-blooded killer he'd faced 3 nights ago. Rebecca dismounted carefully, still holding her daughter. He didn't confess because of his conscience, Marshal. He confessed because he knew we'd won. How's that, the baby? Tommy said suddenly, understanding. She's proof, isn't she? Rebecca smiled at the boy. Smart child. Yes, she's proof. You see, Marshall, my husband, had a distinctive birthmark on his shoulder. A mark that's been in the Morrison family for generations. She carefully adjusted the baby's blanket, revealing a small crescent-shaped mark on the infant's tiny shoulder. Sarah carries the same mark. She's undeniably James Morrison's daughter, which makes her the rightful heir to everything Marcus killed for. Marshal Garrett examined the birthmark and nodded. Family resemblance is strong too. This child is definitely a Morrison, which means Marcus's claim that she wasn't legitimate falls apart completely. Rebecca continued. He confessed and ran because he knew he'd lost the land. The money everything he murdered for belongs to my daughter now. Elias felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Justice, real justice, didn't always come to the frontier. But sometimes when good people stood up for what was right, it found a way. What happens now, he asked. Mrs. Morrison inherits her husband's estate, free and clear. Marcus Morrison is wanted for murder, and there's a substantial reward for information leading to his capture. The marshal pulled out a leather pouch and handed it to Elias. Speaking of rewards, the territorial government pays well for citizens who help apprehend dangerous criminals. Your testimony about his confession sealed the case. Elias hefted the pouch, feeling the weight of more money than he'd seen in years. Enough to start over somewhere new. Enough to give Tommy opportunities he'd never dared imagine. There's something else, Rebecca said, approaching with her daughter. The ranch is too big for just Sarah and me. Too much work, too many memories. I was thinking it might be nice to have neighbors. Good neighbors who understand what family really means. She looked at Tommy, who was gently touching the baby's hand. Sarah's going to need people she can trust. People who've already proven they'll protect her. You're offering us work. I'm offering you a home. A real home where Tommy can go to school and Sarah can grow up safe. Elias looked at his son, who was beaming with the first real happiness he'd shown since his mother died. Then he looked at Rebecca, who was offering them not just employment, but belonging. Why? Because 3 days ago, a stranger risked everything to save my baby's life. Because his son lied to killers to protect us. Because some debts can only be repaid with trust. Elias felt tears sting his eyes. He'd thought he was just buying a mule. Instead, he'd found a future he'd never dared hope for. As they loaded their possessions onto the wagon that would take them to their new home, Tommy rode alongside Rebecca on the old brown mule, chattering about all the things he wanted to show baby Sarah when she got older. Think she'll like horses, P. I think she'll like having a big brother to teach her about them. Rebecca smiled at that, and Elias realized that sometimes the best families aren't the ones you're born into, but the ones you choose to protect. The Morrison Ranch spread out before them under the afternoon sun. No longer a place of death and greed, but a home where love and loyalty had triumphed over violence and betrayal. Where a baby hidden in a saddle had brought together 3 generations who would spend their lives proving that family is defined not by blood, but by the courage to do what's right when everything is at stake, If you enjoyed this story of courage and family in the American West, please subscribe to our channel and consider supporting us with a super chat. Your support helps us bring you more incredible tales from the frontier. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next story. Click the video on your screen now to watch another one of our Western stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat until the very end.